We are ready.
This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. Today is Monday, November 2nd, 2020. It is 3:01 p.m. and this is the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners meeting remotely. We did a sound check right before we started recording, so we know we can hear everybody. We do have myself, Commissioner Hall, and Commissioner Hunt. I see all three of us. We do have a quorum with all three commissioners present. First up is the adoption of our consent calendar. These are items that are routine nature, but either commissioners or staff can poll for further information or discussion if needed.
Madam Chair, I would move for approval of the consent calendar as presented.
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Thanks. Next up under reports, as becoming usual around here, several things to report on. First is Echo Mountain Complex Fire update. This is kind of continuing our conversation from last week. We had given staff some direction to prepare some potential orders to be discussed today. One was about a fee waiver, and the second was to address temporary emergency accommodations in unincorporated areas. So I believe staff has come back with potential orders for us to discuss today. So I'll let Wayne take it from here.
Thank you, Chair Jacobson and Commissioners. So the first item we have on is the fee waiver order. And this is a temporary order which would waive or refund local building and septic permit fees for properties that were impacted by the Echo Mountain Complex wildfire. And as we discussed last week, we looked at some models from other jurisdictions that were doing something similar and then kind of worked off of that. And you have a draft in front of you. Christy or Casey, maybe you could bring up, go down the agenda a little bit further. There's a copy in the packet. Sorry about that. Should have gotten that ready. While they're pulling that up, what we, the proposal that we have in front of you would actually impact a couple of different things in terms of what would be accomplished here. The first is this would deal with primary residences. And then we are proposing that it also deal with properties that were used as long-term residential rentals. And these were either damaged or destroyed because of the wildfires. And when we're talking about long-term residential rentals, we're talking about those that are rented for 30 days or more, so monthly or yearly or a longer-term lease. And we were looking at some of the data and assessments that were made by our partners, including the American Red Cross. And it was very interesting to note the number of persons and properties that were impacted that are rentals. That was a significant part of our housing stock, which was damaged up there. So we were looking at trying to assist in replacing that portion of the housing stock too. So that's included in the proposed order. And what we would do is waive, again, the local portions of those fees. Unfortunately, our fee structure is such that there are components of these fees that are local, those that come to us, but we also collect on behalf of other agencies, including state agencies and non-county agencies, that either by law, administrative rule, and or contract, we collect when we also collect our building and septic fees. And so what we have the authority to do is to waive those local fees, but we would have to collect unless the state agency or other non-county agency was able to waive those fees. We have to collect and remit those to those particular agencies. So that's also clarified in the proposed order. In terms of the residential properties, one of the things we'd want to do is we're concerned about somebody who might rebuild and then decide to convert that immediately to a short-term rental. And that's not the purpose of waiving these particular fees. So we do include a requirement that if a property takes advantage of this program and waives the fees for a long-term rental residence, that they cannot qualify for a short-term rental for a period of 5 years. And so I think you have the rest of the materials in front of you. We're waiving building, plumbing, electrical, and mechanical fees, the manufactured home setup fees, and then all those fees are associated with our subsurface sewage system. for those impacted properties. We've got a mechanism to actually determine which properties would be eligible, and we'll work with our Lincoln County Emergency Services and Lincoln County Assessor's Office to determine the eligible properties. The other thing that in the discussions, this would waive the fees if they have not applied for those permits up front, but we would also refund the fees. And the way we would do that is if someone actually has gone ahead and gotten the permits, we will notify them of their eligibility if they are eligible for a refund. And if they make the request for the refund, then we'll issue those particular refunds. So that's the program that we've put together in the proposal, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Council Belmont. I do have one question that I don't see in here, but it's kind of getting into the weeds, but I think it is something is, let's say you were a long-term rental and you anticipated that you would be a long-term rental. So you went ahead and got the fee waiver, you rebuilt, and you were a long-term rental. And as it says in the order, basically you won't qualify for a short-term rental license for 5 years. You have to be a long-term rental. Let's say at some point in that 5 years, the property sells and then it is no longer a primary residence or a long-term rental. How does that work?
Well, unfortunately, we can only make this determination at the front end when they apply for the permits. So actually, to give you a further scenario, it might be my primary residence that I apply for. I then get the permits, and 2 years later, I sell the property to somebody else and they use it as a second home. There's nothing that we can do that actually, that we can really monitor and keep that to recoup it. So this is really, the primary purpose of doing this is to assist people who do want to get back into their homes, but it's also to rebuild this particular area and do what we can to assist in the reconstruction for whatever uses are done in that particular area.
Okay, all right, that answers my question. Commissioner Hall, questions from you. Oh, you're muted, Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No specific questions. I think maybe for folks who didn't hear our discussion last week, I think one point I'd like to reemphasize, we had Anno Husing, our planning director, Christina Shearer, our finance director, on the conversation. And one of the questions we posed was, especially because planning, building, development is a department whose operations are largely driven by fees, whether it was realistic to essentially take this financial hit, provide these permits without charge, and yet not impair the ability of the planning department to do its function. And I think the reassurances we got pretty solidly were that, yes, it will, require some adjustment, but the fact that rebuilding is going to be realistically a multi-year process, the feeling was that, yes, the department could absorb this. So I think, I want to thank planning staff, legal staff for crafting something that I think, it's impossible to forecast every contingency down the road, but I think this is really a thoughtful approach to us helping facilitate rebuilding of primary residences.
Okay, Commissioner Hunt, questions or comments?
I guess I will start following up the area that Commissioner Hall was addressing. I guess I would like clarification. So my understanding is that the director of planning, who I don't believe is on the virtual call, is confident that this additional burden that will be placed on the planning department will not require additional staff or other significantly increased costs. I.e., my concern is that we waive fees and all of a sudden we have to hire somebody, and so we've kind of taken a double hit. And I guess I'll direct that to staff, anyone who's comfortable answering in the absence of the planning director.
Take a stab. Okay, go ahead.
This is Christina. when I talked with Anno about this, we did talk about the possibility of staff, and he was pretty confident that that he could handle the existing workload. The presumption is that some of this workload will actually supplant workload they would have had anyway. In other words, the contractors that would otherwise be building new housing or doing other things are now going to be working on this. And so it's kind of a redirection of existing workload. That's our assumption on the workload side. Yeah, they probably will see a push short term, but not anything that's going to require additional staffing. At least that's the understanding that we discussed. So any hit that we're going to take is going to be purely on the revenue side. And there will be some. I mean, there's no question there will be a reduction of revenue in there. But we don't believe that it's going to be so onerous as to cause a significant problem to the general fund.
All right, thank you. And while I have you, Christina, what is the potential of revenue that we're waiving? I recognize that in some ways it's not budgeted because we didn't anticipate the wildfire, but what's the potential for lost revenue?
I don't have those numbers at my fingertips. Part of it is because we don't know the timing. And here's the other thing, you know, here again, these are fees that are likely, here's Anna right now. These are fees that in some cases will be somewhat of a windfall in that, you know, we were not going to do 300 new manufactured homes in Lincoln County. You know, only but for the fire would these fees even be applicable. So there's some of that going on where we're actually, you know, recognizing that some of this revenue wouldn't have been ours anyway in a normal year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I indicated that it's unbudgeted revenue, but I'm still, I think it's prudent to have an understanding of the financial cost of waiving the fees. Director Husing, I see you've joined us. Can you answer what you expect to be? And again, it's not revenue that we budgeted, but it's revenue that the county could obtain if we did not waive these fees. And I'm not saying I don't support the waiver. I'm just saying that I think part of the fiduciary responsibility that we have is to understand what the costs or lost revenue, better term, are.
Thank you, Commissioner Hunt, members of the commission. Again, Anno Husing, Director of the Planning Department. Last week, we talked, I was speculating about what the potential revenue implications were of this. And I think when we looked at when we stacked all of the manufactured home placement permits, that really only ran about $76 some odd thousand, $80,000 would be the full impact of that. And then it's on the septic side that it starts getting up more like 200K, 250K by the time all of those permits get waived. And so I think that's ballparking because we don't really know exactly, and I think we certainly don't know how many of these properties are good. If the past is any guide about other places, not all the properties got redeveloped in the first year. So any of these so-called impacts, and Christina was correct in mentioning that it's not like this is found revenue because but for the disaster, we wouldn't have had these issues. And we're still, Commissioner Hunt, we're still extremely busy at the planning department. So our numbers are looking good in terms of sustaining our revenues and our contribution to the general fund. But again, you know, the major point is if these are revenue impacts, they're very unlikely to be felt all in one year anyway. They'll be spread out over a couple of years.
Yeah. So will you confirm what Director Scherer said, that you don't anticipate the burden of the additional work requiring a staff increase?
No, but you know, our department, first of all, we're in the process of hiring another planner, which some people in the real estate community will be applauding right now, knowing that on some of our land use applications are held up. We probably, in a larger sense, could use another environmental health specialist from a staffing perspective, given the amount of interest in Lincoln County. We're sort of getting through that right now by having some part-time help on that front. But one of the saving graces here is that so many of these, well, it's horrible that this happened, But because so many of these properties that were where the fires happened were manufactured homes, a silver lining only for us is that the chances, almost all of those are going to be replaced by manufactured homes. And the reality is that requires very few inspections from our staff, actually. That's why that fee is only down in the neighborhood of $300 for a replacement permit, because again, the inspections and those units are being built in a factory, and that's where they're being inspected. And so we know when they arrive, they meet Oregon building code. It's unlike a stick-built home where our people have to be in there quite a number of times throughout the process of the building of that structure to perform those inspections. So the long story short, the lion's share of a lot of that work is gonna it just happen to fall into a category of that require very few inspections from us. That's one of the reasons the financial hit from the manufactured home part was only in the neighborhood of $76,000 had we collected all those fees.
Okay, that helps. Thank you. Two other areas of question. We indicated that the fee waivers would be for rentals if they were long-term rentals. What will we use as evidence that the house has been long-term rental or will be long-term rental?
Part of the damage assessment process was to look at the uses of those particular properties and what they were used for. And we do know that a lot of the reporting was very specifically that there were renters in these particular units. So we just have to kind of match the data that we've got and information from a variety of sources to confirm that these are long-term rental properties. So that's part of what the assessment process was. And that was the reason why we included that particular language, was it was pretty impressive to see the number of renters who actually were asking for assistance in that particular area who were displaced as a result of the fire. So it's going to take a little more work to do that than it would be necessarily the primary residence, but we've got some tools to do that.
Commissioner Hunt, if I can add one point to that, one of the things that's really struck me about what after the fires and I'm really impressed at the number of different families and people that know each other and in the Panther Creek area. There's a lot of knowledge about who lives where and does what up there. That this is not, unlike something that we've heard about some of our communities that are vacation home dominated these days. This Panther Creek's not like that. People know who's who up there, and so I'm actually feeling quite confident that there's a rich enough knowledge among people up there. If someone comes to us with a cock and bull story that really doesn't make any sense, I think we're going to know that. So I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to navigate that.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, I think it's appropriate to waive those fees for rental properties that are properties that are truly rentals long term. So.
And I believe the ordinance calls for a 5-year commitment to keep them as rentals too. That's
yeah. No, that's good. So last question I have, and it's, I guess, forgive me for going back to some of my banker terms, but there was a time when people talked about subprime loans and, a prime rate loan is a good loan, so a subprime loan would be a good loan. Well, no, subprime loans were below the standard. So non-county agencies, to me, that meant that the agency wasn't within the county, but correct me, Council Belmont, that what you're talking about is an agency that is not the county, but would still be operational within the county.
That's correct. And actually, the one we're going to have further discussion on this, and we had some discussion last week, the major agency we collect those fees for is the school district with the construction excise tax.
Okay, and as this order reads, that we would continue to collect that as we would for all non-county agencies.
Right, and I think we're going to have further discussion around that particular matter.
Okay.
I don't know when you want to pick that up, but we're going to have further discussion around that. So.
And Commissioner Hunt, we've more or less been informing people that, there are an awful lot of people that know this fee waiver. This has created quite a stir here, this whole fees and fee waivers, and so we've already been communicating to people that we don't have the authority to waive those state fees that are a part of the fees that we charge. And people seem to recognize that and are still quite pleased that the other fees are being waived, and they're comfortable with the fact that at least most of those state fees are something that they can handle.
All right. I appreciate the opportunity to ask questions. Thank you.
All right, so question to Council Belmont. I believe that we have this just under update. Would we be able to adopt this today?
You can, if you so desire.
Okay, I guess I'll see if someone would like to make a motion.
Madam Chair, I would move that we approve the proposed order providing a waiving or refunding local building and septic permit fees for certain property owners rebuilding, replacing, or repairing primary residences and long-term rental properties damaged or destroyed by the Echo Mountain Complex fire.
I'll second it. I'll note normally I'd like a week. I guess this was discussed last week, but under the circumstances, I'm comfortable seconding it.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. All right, moving on in our agenda, I think we have a second potential order to discuss, also kind of picking up from last week. I believe this one was about basically people, addressing temporary emergency accommodations in the unincorporated parts of Lincoln County. So back to Council Belmont.
And Commissioners, if I might, actually, Assistant County Counsel Jerry Herbage worked on this and drafted it up. And so I'm going to turn it over to him to talk about the particulars of this proposed order.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Council Belmont. This is Jerry Herbage, Assistant County Counsel. And Commissioner, you're correct. This was on the agenda last week. And we went through it. I went through the parameters, and the board asked that a change be made to it. So I'm going to go through the changes that are in this order that were not there last week, and give a little more background to this. So what we're talking about is this concept. Generally, people are to use their RVs for recreation purposes and not for housing purposes. And so generally in our code under Chapter 1, you can't use an RV for housing. But following the wildfire, it was thought that it would be a good idea to allow RVs for housing with certain limited parameters. And so some of those parameters include the following. So you must have been displaced by the Echo Mountain Complex fire. The earlier draft said, or another fire in the state of Oregon. We eliminated that. So this is going to be only displaced by the Echo Mountain Complex fire. The owner of the underlying real property must grant permission in writing to the occupants of the RV to temporarily reside there. And the RV must be connected to sanitation facilities, whether within the RV or through access to sanitation facilities on adjacent private property. The occupants have to have reasonable access to potable water. Another rule is no more than one RV may be allowed on each lot. And it's not allowed in all zones. So our order allows a placement of an RV only in a residential zone, or like in a timber conservation zone or agricultural conservation zone, if there is already a dwelling on the subject property. So for instance, if it's a commercial zone, this will not allow for that. The RV cannot be located in any floodplain. And there are certain restrictions in terms of not blocking the lanes of travel if it's in a right of way abutting the property, and there's certain rules on that that are contained therein. And let me move move up here. This is the new one, and this was, I think this was a good idea that the board came up last week. So we're gonna allow this, but there has to be a registration. So the occupant has to register the RV by submitting a completed and signed form that's gonna be prepared by the Lincoln County Planning Development Department and return that to the department. We're gonna have no charge for this registration, but the registration will allow us to keep track of who is doing this, and it will be less onerous than a licensing procedure. And so we're not going the licensing way, but by recommendation of the board, we're doing a registration. And let's go over a few other sideboards. This is only allowed in the unincorporated areas of Lincoln County. It does not excuse any environmental violations of the law. And it remains in force in effect until September 10th, 2021, unless it is earlier terminated or extended by the board here. And then I did add a sentence to clarify. I said, there shall be no right to continue the occupation of the RV allowed by this order after expiration of the order. So that's new language, just to clarify what was really already there. And remember, there is some language in here that this will not excuse violations of conditions, covenants, and restrictions or other governing documents that might be in existence in some places. The point is this county does not monitor, interpret, or enforce such CC&Rs. And we say that we encourage homeowner association boards of directors and other private governing bodies to consider suspending enforcement consisting with this order during this time of unprecedented crisis and need. But anyway, I'd be happy to answer any questions. To summarize, this is one additional tool to help take care of the housing problem following the wildfire. It's temporary. It requires registration now. There are significant sideboards. And frankly, there's a built-in escape valve. That is, if this isn't working, I expect that it will work. Other jurisdictions are doing this, but the board can suspend the order. That's written into this document itself. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I can tell you that everybody in our office worked on this. And in fact, it was nice. We went over some documents on Wednesday. I was in the office Wednesday, and Wayne and I went through this and made a few minor changes. So it's been vetted.
Thank you, Councilor Rubich. Just a couple of, I guess, comments. One is I did a similar process with DLCD because they sit on their commission. We did something really similar in nature to this. Some of this does make me a little nervous because we've had a lot of issues with RVs, being where they shouldn't over the years. But I also realize in the unprecedented, emergency we're in, people need to be bolstered. And I feel like this has the right caveats and registrations in it that we can really track. That people are using this for the right purpose and not simply an excuse to have an unlicensed RV park. So I feel like we have tempered it down enough where it's useful, but not hopefully creating other problems for us. While I understand that we can only do something that's in the unincorporated parts of Lincoln County, I would just say that if we do adopt this, I would really encourage staff to maybe send what we adopt out to the city of Lincoln City and maybe Tillamook County as well, because we know that people are already in RVs in various places around our communities trying to find shelter. It might be nice to have some consistent things passed in adjoining municipalities, if that's something we do, or at least for them to consider. So I would just ask that if we pass it or what we pass, if we do pass something, maybe be shared around to our neighbors so that they can consider it as well. And with that, I'll see if others have questions. Commissioner Hunt, questions or comments?
No, you already addressed my comment, which is I would hope that other jurisdictions in the surrounding area would consider a similar order.
Commissioner Hall?
Nothing to add really other than to reinforce what's been said. I think from our discussion last week, we gave staff direction and they've really crafted up a measure that does provide one more tool for temporary housing while putting enough sideboards on it, hopefully to keep it from being misused or abused.
You know, with that thought in mind, excuse me, Chair Jacobson, is there some way that if we start to see this order abused or misused or creating other...
If we really feel like this is not working, it can be rapidly rescinded by the commission. But I think the more probable result is if you have one or two bad actors out there who are sort of abusing the process and obviously taking advantage of it somehow, then somebody's likely to complain, and then Jesse Hess, our code enforcement officer, is likely to pay him a visit with a ticket book and have a conversation. So I think we really have all of the existing enforcement mechanisms are there at the ready, just in case somebody is trying to exploit this who shouldn't be. And again, I like the eyes and the ears on the community. I think there are a lot of people in Panther Creek that really pay attention to what else is happening in the community there, and they're going to be our best eyes and ears on what's going on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Council Urbidge, I would assume this is something we also could adopt today if we would like to.
That's correct, Commissioner.
Okay. I will pause and take a dramatic pause and see if someone would like to make a motion.
I'm happy to do that, Madam Chair, that I move that we adopt the proposed order addressing temporary emergency accommodations in the unincorporated areas of Lincoln County.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and motion carries. All right, under Echo Mountain Complex Fire Update, if you're still watching with us, we're now under C, Housing Mission Update presented by Wayne Belmont County Council. And I will just say that, boy, this just changes every minute. So I'm sure what Wayne thought he was going to say at 8 o'clock this morning might be different at 3 o'clock. So take it away, Wayne.
And I guess to add to that, I'm not sure that I'm even up to date with everything because I noticed my email has exploded with all kinds of information and updates from a variety of sources here. So let me just say this. We continue to recognize that one of the key, if not the key, components of our recovery process is putting together this housing mission. And I'm using the term to talk about all the various things we have discussed with the two items above. It includes the temporary housing that we're going to provide for people as they transition into their more permanent placement or replacement of their homes and everything in between. Say, first of all, is that your letter to FEMA, which you directed us to put out and share with our state and congressional delegation, as well as the folks from FEMA, seems to have bore fruit. We understand, although I have not actually seen, maybe you've seen the official notification, but I know we're going to have a discussion later this week with FEMA that they are going to be proposing a mission for our area. And so really this is going to be a much more detailed update, I think, next week than it's going to be this week. But that will include, as you may recall, we're talking about the various alternatives and options to provide that housing. It could be direct assistance. It could be models that include leasing and redeveloping some properties and utilizing those. And then the other components that we've been dealing with in terms of providing, making sure that everyone does have adequate housing while we continue the recovery process. Of course, the other item that is coming our direction that we continue to look at is also, and this is not directly related to the wildfire. I mean, it is now. I'm sorry, it is related to the wildfire that was the emergency board's action, looking at making available some monies for the potential purchase and operation of motel rooms across the state to assist the victims of the wildfire. And we continue to explore what that means and look at whether or not we can submit an application for that particular program. So a lot of moving parts in this whole process. I do want to say two more things. One is that I know we're getting some more detailed information, and I think there's a little bit better sharing of information from the American Red Cross on the status of people that are under their assistance and how we can transition those people to more intermediate kinds of housing options. And we're continuing to work with what's known as the multi-agency shelter transition team, which is another component part of the process that gathers all the community together, looks at all the resources that are available, and helps with that transition from Red Cross assistance to other assistance. So I'm going to stop it there. I think you might have more information than I do on some of these things. But there is a lot of activity taking place. And I think, again, we're going to have a much better idea by next week at this time of where we stand.
Thanks, Wayne. I'll fill in with what I know, and then maybe together we'll, along with Commissioner Hall and Hunt, we'll have more of a full picture here. But I attended the meeting with FEMA last week. Housing was one of the things talked about. There's really no kind of answer given whether or not we're going to qualify for a housing mission, because they're continuing to evaluate and take information. Kurt Schrader was there in the meeting, and I think that was very helpful for him to actually see the stumbling blocks that we're kind of up against here and getting an answer. And additionally, no timeline was given on when an answer was going to be given. So that was a little frustrating. But even since that meeting, I feel like things have maybe changed a little bit, and I would suspect probably we do get some type of answer here maybe in the next week or two. I will say, because I guess last week, I don't know if it was my mouth or someone else was on this call, was referring to the housing mission. I got several emails saying, what does that mean? So I thought I would just clarify. Housing mission in FEMA language is basically them providing direct housing. This could include them providing trailers. It could include them doing direct leases with property owners, so they actually enter the lease. It could include, they have a program, which I'll talk about in a minute, where they actually take properties that are in private ownership that may be in need of repair in order to be rented. So they do the repairs and then lease them directly from that owner for fire survivors. So those are all things in the FEMA housing mission. It's basically just saying FEMA directly assisting those people, which is different than a fire survivor going out and finding their own rental or own situation. So I would clarify that. I will say earlier today, I think probably all of us got it, but earlier today, FEMA did send out a press release saying that they were looking for properties in the wildfire affected area that were multifamily, so duplexes, triplexes, and up, that basically needed repairs to be done on those properties for them to be rentable. And they would like to hear from property owners that may be interested in entering some type of agreement with FEMA for those properties to be fixed and then rented out to fire survivors. So we did the press release. I'll ask Casey maybe put that out on our website so people can go look at that. I just thought it would mention it here at our public meeting, because I think, hopefully someone watching has a duplex or something in North Lincoln County that maybe needs some repairs, and that might be a kind of a win-win for them and for getting people housed. So I would mention that as well. So that's kind of what I know as of 3:41 on Monday, and I'm sure it will change as well. And I will see if Commissioner Hall, do you have anything to add on the housing piece?
No, I really don't, except I have heard through some of my, I guess I would call unofficial or back channels, that indeed are pushing on this and enlisting the help of the congressional delegation. Has had an effect, has brought FEMA to the table. I do have one question, if I could, for Mr. Belmont. I believe when we were discussing this last week, one of the things that you brought up was, well, as we've just heard, that the housing mission can involve a whole variety of options, but in terms of the FEMA trailers, I think, you mentioned the number 60, but it wasn't sure if the trailers, and I don't know if we've had any clarification on this yet, or if that's going to have to wait till the Wednesday meeting, whether 60 would refer to 60 trailers to house, like say 60 different family units, or whether it would be 60 people total who might be eligible for that form of housing assistance.
And I don't have any clarification on that. That's one of the things that we'll be seeking to get clarification on at the upcoming meetings.
Great, thanks.
Commissioner Hunt, anything to add?
I'll just say that I'm very superstitious, so I'm not going to say anything until we get FEMA's approval.
Understood for certain. Well,
Commissioner Jake, can I add one? Yeah, just, I just want to point out for the good of the order here that it's only an anecdote, but earlier today I spoke to a gentleman, fire victim, everything was gone. They were not insured. And that gentleman was so thankful for the way FEMA is stepping up and helping them. They are going to be able to get back into their home because, and I even wrote down the number, FEMA's providing that family, that individual, $35,000 to be able to work toward getting their home repurchased. If anyone that thinks the government doesn't often help or this, what do they do for us? I would have loved to have had a recording, because I said at the end of the conversation when I learned, and he was very generous about offering as much information as he could, because I said, well, were you insured? And just so we all can try to get a handle on how effective is any of this. But I had tears in my eyes listening to that guy talk about how thankful he was, and he never expected that kind of level of help, and how unbelievably thankful he was. So with that, I will stand down, and it's the end of the anecdote, but it made me very proud to be an American to hear that we do reach out. We're not like a third world country that when something like this happens, it takes years to recover, that we step up as Americans and we help each other. And I think this was a great example of that. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Director Husing. I appreciate that. It's nice to hear nice stories and kind of this hard time. So thank you. One more thing I would just forgot to mention earlier is when it comes to the e-board decision to provide money for wildfire affected communities, potentially purchase hotels or other underutilized buildings for housing. I did today, along with Rachel Maddox-Hughes. It sounds dramatic. It's not that dramatic, but we did submit a short sentence basically saying we have intent to apply, which basically commits us to nothing other than making sure we're on the mailing list. So that's what they asked us to do, is if you had interest, to email saying you had an intent, so that they would make sure that when the RFP comes out, you received it. So not a commitment that we apply or a commitment that we Louisiana County apply, but just making sure that we're receiving that communication through Oregon Community Foundation, which is the fiscal agent for that project. We'll need to have some conversations coming up as that RFP is released, and we know more about what actually would be needed and what actually is being offered, but we are on the list to receive the information. So,
great. Madam Chair, if I might, before we move on, I know we have presentations from Public Health and the Sheriff's Office. I do have one thing I would like to bring to the floor that's not on the agenda, but it does relate to housing and the rebuilding of housing, and I just wanted to get your call if you think it would be proper to bring it up now, or if you would like me to wait and bring this to the floor during our commissioners' discussion following these other presentations.
Is this a wildfire related issue?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
yes,
okay, I think go now. I think that would be helpful.
Okay, and I do have a statement and a proposed motion I want to bring up, and what I'm going to do, and I know this is not our usual procedure to bring something forward directly that essentially has not gone through staff. But, well, let me read the statement and we'll see how you receive it and what kind of discussion we have. But in a moment, I'm going to offer a motion that effectively the Board of Commissioners will direct the Planning Department not to collect the construction excise tax on any application for a permit to replace a home that was lost in the Echo Mountain Complex fire. Now, before I make this motion, I would like to explain why. As we know, approximately 300 homes in the Panther Creek area were destroyed in this terrible wildfire. Most of these homes were occupied by low-income seniors or working families, and many of these people are employed in the hospitality and service industries in Lincoln City. No lives were lost in the fire, but as we know, as we have been wrestling with these last several weeks, the economic, environmental, and human toll of the fire has been incalculable. A few minutes ago, our board formalized the decision we made last week, which was to direct staff to waive local permit fees for homes that are being replaced that were lost to the fire. However, it was alluded to earlier in the meeting, and there has been a lot of discussion in the community. The Oregon School Construction Excise Tax still imposes fees on these replacement homes, and those fees are far greater than our county fees. Now, here's where I think some history provides important context for understanding my motion. Back in 2007, the Oregon legislature saw a public need. Many school districts, especially those experiencing rapid growth, were having difficulty in keeping up with their facilities' needs. In response, the legislature enacted a law allowing districts to charge an excise tax on new construction of residential, commercial, and industrial structures. This law also authorized any district adopting this tax to enter into an intergovernmental agreement or an IGA with another entity to serve as collector of the tax. Now, here in Lincoln County, after the school board elected to impose the tax, an IGA was negotiated with Lincoln County. So at the time someone pays their permitting fees to the county, they also write a separate check to the school district, which we then pass along to the district. In recent weeks, the Lincoln County School Board has been approached about waiving this fee. The district has expressed sympathy for those who have lost their homes. At the same time, they assert that the existing statute does not give them the right to grant such a waiver. Not all school districts have interpreted the statute in the same way. The Greater Albany School District has a long-standing provision in its policies exempting, and I'm quoting, the replacement of a structure, either residential or non-residential, which replaces an existing structure. On October 16th, the board of the North Sandiam School District voted to waive the tax for any home construction caused as a result of a direct loss from the Beachy Creek fire. That district superintendent, Andy Gardner, told the Newport News Times that their district has always followed a similar policy, not charging for replacement structures. When courts interpret laws, they often look at the question of original intent of the law. In other words, they go beyond the language of the statute itself to consider the statements of sponsors, committee testimony, and floor debates to clarify the real intent of those who passed the law. Brian Deckard, who was then a state senator from Beaverton, was the lead sponsor of this bill. He told KGW-TV last week that he believes school districts do have the discretion to provide waivers. And again, I'm quoting former Senator Deckard's words, "I'd be really disappointed and surprised if they charged the wildfire victims this fee because it would be relatively easy for them not to do it," close quote. I also spoke with John Chandler. He was the former lobbyist for the Home Builders Association, who was in the thick of the negotiations that led to passage of this law. The home builders supported the measure after having opposed the idea of allowing school districts to improve system development charges, or SDCs. SDCs are charged on new development to help pay for the cost of public improvements like water, sewer, and roads. So let me give you a hypothetical example. Let's say a brand new house is built within Lincoln City. The city would impose SDCs. Now, suppose that house burns down 5 years later, the owner decides to rebuild. The city would not impose a second set of SDCs, and similarly, the CET should not be imposed a second time on the same property. The original measure, which was Senate Bill 1036, states in Section 4 that, quote, construction taxes may be imposed only in improvements to real property that result in a new structure or additional square footage in an existing structure. Please note those words carefully. New structure, not replacement structure, new structure. When I first took office, as we all did, I swore an oath to uphold the state and national constitutions and the laws thereof. I never imagined that I would find myself in a position of proposing that we do not uphold the law. But I believe there are principled legal grounds that we can use to decline to collect this fee. The tax was, and it is, a just law. It has helped school districts address important building needs. In the case of the Lincoln County District, it's helped to pay for seismic upgrades and other remodel projects. But to apply this law to people who have had their homes, memories, and futures wiped out is not just, and it may be legally unjustified. I believe it's our civic and moral duty as elected leaders to do all we can to help our neighbors heal and rebuild as quickly as possible. Once, decades ago, Governor Tom McCall learned that one of his staff may have bent and even broken some of the rules involved with the program, and he summoned this employee to the governor's office. McCall looked at him squarely and asked, "Did you help people?" The assistant nodded yes. McCall's answer, "That's all that matters." Now, Madam Chair, I think we're at a similar crossroads. So I am moving that we direct the Lincoln County Planning Department not to collect the construction excise tax on any home construction projects that qualify for the fee waiver we adopted by separate board action earlier today. Thank you.
All right, well, I guess I will just share how I'm feeling about that. I know we have a motion sitting there, but if we can have some discussion, I think that would be helpful. I do think that this fee does need to be.
Point of order, Chair. Point of order.
Yeah.
Has the motion been seconded?
No, you're right. Do we have a second? Okay, there is no second, so the motion dies. But I would like to have some discussion. So I do feel like that fee does need to be waived. I agree with a lot of what you said there. I don't think that was the intent when that was first created. However, I feel like we need a true fix here, and telling our director to not collect fees makes us liable, makes him liable, but I'm also worried that it makes the homeowner liable. You know, I'm not an attorney, and maybe this is a question for county council, but could someone come back after them later to pay those fees? I would rather see us continue to use some diplomacy and some pressure on our friends on the school board, as well as the legislature, who I know is working on trying to fix this, so that we have a solution for this, and not just for right now in this moment, but for other emergencies that may come up. Hopefully we don't see fires like the state of Oregon saw this summer, early fall, but we may. And I think that we can't, a fix is not simply not collecting fees, it's actually fixing the actual problem. And so while I want to say yes, I don't want the people to have to pay that, I feel like that's not setting us up for actually fixing fixing the process problem that we have. And I will continue to try to work on this, to advocate for this, and hopefully find a solution here so that we can move forward and have this fixed, not just for right now, as I said, but for future wildfires, heaven forbid, or other things that we have to face. So those are my thoughts on this. Commissioner Hunt?
Well, my primary concern is, well, certainly, I think there are valid reasons to consider waiving the fee. I don't believe it's our jurisdiction to make that decision. I served on the school board for 9 years. The school board is elected to make decisions that they believe are in the best interests of the school district. And whether or not I agree or whether or not others agree with the decision that board has made, that is the decision that they've made. And I think it's entirely inappropriate for us to use a hammer and say, well, we don't agree with your decision. And we think there's ample reason to waive the fee, so we're going to order that the fee not be collected. That to me is frightening. I think it creates adversarial relationship with the school board, and I think that is counterproductive. And I agree with the comment, Chair Jacobson, that we need to find a comprehensive solution. And we need to work collaboratively and cooperatively with the school board as well as other boards when there are differences in what we feel are in the best interests of our mutual residents of the county. So I certainly oppose the motion.
All right. Are we ready to move on from fire? Okay. Great. Moving on, Lincoln County Public Health COVID-19 update. I will say that we did lose Rebecca Austin on this because she is actually filling in for me, actually for all of us, with a meeting with Governor Brown discussing the new school matrix. The meeting was scheduled, without doodle polls or anything. And so, of course, all of us are in this. So I had asked her to attend that in our absence and bring us back the information, mostly I think just going over questions from the new matrix that were set out last week. So I think we have Florence still here with us who can give us the update.
Hi, good afternoon. Florence Portal-Deputy, Director of Public Health for Lincoln County. I have a few points that I would like to make today. I'd like to review the data, and just Casey, this is not the latest dashboard. I don't think that is shown on the screen. And then I'd like to discuss the testing events that we're putting in place for next week, and then discuss also the new school metrics. So as for the latest data, so it's been updated, and the data is as of 10/31 of 2020. So on Saturday, we had 519 cases and presumptive cases. We added 3 more over the weekend. The good news, though, as you will see, thank you very much. So as you'll see, we saw a significant drop in the average number of new cases compared to the previous 2 weeks, which is encouraging, as well as the number of people who've been diagnosed with COVID-19 as compared to the 2 previous weeks. As you can see on the bottom, number of new cases by week is definitely on the down low. You can move on to the demographics, please. Thank you. So we are still seeing, or maybe not, maybe the 30 to 49 category took the lead this last week for number of cases by age. But as you can see, I mean, the two leading age categories are very much the 18 to 29 and 30 to 49. The distribution of cases by sex at birth is also kind of like pretty well balanced. On the testing front, yeah, thank you. So as we've discussed for the past few weeks, the number of tests that have been conducted in Indian counties have decreased. It's almost like it is consistently decreasing. And because of the smaller numbers of tests, if we have a few positive, then we have a proportion of positive tests that is likely to go up, which is what we're seeing here with the proportion of positive tests as of Saturday, that was 5.1%. We can move on to the school metrics, and I can discuss there. So as you may or may not know, there were quite a few changes that were published on Friday to the school metrics guidelines. And so the main points are this. So the metrics are based on the latest COVID-19 studies and data, and they align to the CDC recommendations, and they also are in line with standards in other states like California, and help Oregon meet its priority to return students to in-person instruction. Since Oregon's metrics were originally issued in August, more data has become available from school districts across the country. The Oregon Department of Education worked with the Oregon Health Authority to establish when students can return to the classroom while still mitigating the risk of COVID-19 spread. So a key lesson that was learned from the review of national school data is that Oregon school districts can help protect student and staff health and well-being during in-person instruction when community spread is sufficiently low and when school districts strictly adhere to the health and safety protocols now in place in Oregon. So there are three major changes to the metrics. So first of all, the state removed the statewide 5% threshold for percentage of tests coming back positive. And this simplified the approach and will also better reflect local conditions. The second change is that the review period for examining the metric data went to a 2-week period rather than 3 consecutive 1-week periods. And this is a change that aligns fully with the CDC, California, and other states. And it will avoid the situations that we've seen in the past where a one-time cluster in a small county can reset the clock for that county for an additional 3 weeks. And then the third main change is that there has been a decision to expand the exception for K3 to all elementary age students up to grade 6. And this is because there is new evidence that suggests that kiddos K to 6 seem to be at lower risk of transmitting COVID-19. So those are the main changes to the school metrics. And as you can see, back to the dashboard, so it's a little bit, so if you are, if the color is in the green, then it means that the county and the school district in the county can consider looking at going back to on-site instruction. If we're in the yellow portion, we can do on-site and distance learning on the basis of some type of a hybrid model. If we are in the transition orange color, we need to consider, so it can go both ways, right? We can be transitioning towards the green or transitioning towards the red. So if we transition towards the green, the schools can start thinking about on-site learning and or putting together a hybrid model. But if we're transitioning into the red, then the schools really need to start considering implementing comprehensive distance learning for all grades. So as of Saturday, we were in the green when it comes to the county case rate. And as you may also notice, the county case rate has been increased to allow for a little bit more flexibility. So the trend in percent of positive tests I've addressed already. It's due to our smaller numbers. The percent of cases not traced to a known source is a little bit more concerning. We like knowing where people contracted the virus, right? Either they're linked to an outbreak, or we know that they're part of a cluster, or this is, a household transmission. So we're a little bit, we're at 50%, which is a little bit higher than I would like, but we'll make sure that this is well addressed at our team meeting on Wednesday. Other than that, we're doing really good. The last topic I wanted to discuss was to let you know that next week we're working to have 4 testing sites available for people. So the test will be free, and of course for COVID-19. People can come in regardless of symptoms, okay? We decided to cover 4 different locations to try to really cover most of the county. So we will start in Waldport, then Newport, then Lincoln City, and then Toledo. The team is working on putting flyers together and communicating around those events. This is a partnership with the Oregon Health Authority and Medical Teams International. We're very excited about this opportunity. So we will start on Tuesday in Waldport, and we'll go from 1 to 6 p.m. and 1 to 6 p.m. in Newport on Wednesday, 1 to 6 p.m. in Lincoln City on Thursday, and then Toledo will be in the morning of Friday the 13th from 9 to 1 p.m. And hopefully it will be extremely well attended, and hopefully we will get a lot of negative and very, very few positive. But I think it's a very good surveillance tool for us to kind of make sure that the numbers we have been seeing are actually what's happening in the community at large. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a few. So first, if we can go back to the testing tab. Yeah, so question I have, the upper left-hand thing, it says COVID-19 testing in Lincoln County. and I'm reading here to make sure I understand this. Is that results? That must be results beyond Lincoln County, because I was going to say the number of positives is way over what we have. So
Yes, I wonder if maybe this is we need to confirm this with Peter. Because I know he's working on multiple dashboards. That's a very good catch. We just got this new update like a few minutes before we put them up. So yeah, absolutely right. It might be the Benton County numbers on this one.
All right, so I think something needs to be fixed there, because I don't like having an extra 500 cases there. So,
Yes.
thank you. And then if we could go back to the OHA metrics. And I know Peter does these graphs, but I would really appreciate if we could rename where it says governor's watch list for Lincoln County, maybe just say watch list criteria, because I think people think we are on the watch list, even though it says no on the hand corner. And having been on the watch list, we really don't want to go back. And so I think if we could just make that heading a little clearer that it's the criteria, because the title kind of implies that we are already on it. I've had some comments about that. And then the last thing I wanted to say is really excited about the testing that we're doing. I don't think it's gone out through media yet. Have we sent out the press release yet, Florence? I haven't seen it hit my inbox.
Not yet.
No, okay.
Not yet.
I'm sure there's people that were listening and trying to frantically scribble down what Florence was saying, but we will work on getting a press release out here in the next day, I would imagine.
Yes, we are working out the latest details and hoping for a translation in Spanish very soon. And then everything will be, sent to the media, social media. We were thinking about also possibly doing some radio spots. So.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think all of that is great. And adults and kids can get tested? Like, can you take your whole household, or is it just adults, or?
That's a very good question. I do not remember the picture notes, but I do not remember any restriction.
If you're not sure, that's fine. Let's just circle back and make sure that's clear in the information that we send out.
I don't remember any restriction.
Okay. My understanding is this is not the deep nasal swab. It's just the kind of self-administered inner nasal swab. So I know it's kind of the easier test, but again, I just want to reiterate that this is free. This is not, you don't need to have symptoms. And my understanding is this is a drive-through kind of situation. You don't need an appointment. You don't need to go through your primary care physician. You don't need any kind of that stuff. You can just go and get tested. So I really hope that we have a good turnout. I'm really grateful to OHA and other partners in our public health department for kind of pulling this off. The last question for you, Florence, is I really hope that we have just a super low positivity rate coming out of that. But just want to make sure before we go into this, which is going to produce a lot of tests, that you guys have all of the contact tracers and support you need. If that's not the case, and we end up having to do a lot of work on those cases that we pick up, that you guys are ready and don't need any additional people or staff to catch what might be coming.
So thank you for this question. So yes, the team is well aware that those testing events are coming up. The really good news is that all of the calling for the negative results is going to be done by the Oregon Health Authority. So we'll only have to handle the positive case investigation. In case we were to hit an outbreak of some sort or have an amount of positive cases that we felt was kind of a little bit overwhelming, we have resources that we can pull from at the Oregon Health Authorities. They have people ready to help in case we need it. So, and we have a great team of contact tracers as well. So I would say we're pretty set, and we have very seasoned staff since they had to cover quite a few cases during the outbreak in June. The other thing I wanted to mention is that even though the event is a drive-through event, you don't need a car to get tested, right? You can come in, you can walk in as long as you remain physically distant. And you can also, like, if you have a bicycle, you can also access the testing. So this is not a car required event.
Yeah, good point, because not everyone has their own vehicle. So glad to know you can walk up or pedal up or what have you. That's all the questions I have at this point. Just really excited and really encourage people to go and get tested. Questions or comments from Commissioner Hall?
No questions. Just again, I'm getting a lot of positive feedback on the new dashboard that has word is filtering out. People, the feedback I'm getting is really very positive, that it's easy to use. They appreciate the interactive features. And yes, the news about the testing is also very positive. And I'll say what I've been saying for several weeks, a big hurrah to our public health team and a big hurrah to our community for continuing to take COVID seriously, and that for us to continue to buck the national trends where we're seeing, and really international trends where so many places are seeing a second wave. And that's still not to say, despite all of our precautions, that we might not see a second wave ourselves. But I do have confidence that our public health and hospital systems at least will be prepared to cope with it if that unfortunate scenario develops. Thank
Okay,
you.
Commissioner, questions or comments?
One question is, how long will it take for the people that are tested to get the results?
So what I was told is that people will be told that it can take up to a week, but it might be faster than that.
Okay. And then following up on Commissioner Hall's comments, kudos to our citizens. As people know, I've been tracking this virus since its inception, or I guess since it started in our county and state. And for the first time since the first case was reported in the state, our rate of positivity is lower than the state rate of positivity. That's again since the first case was identified in the state. Also indicating that we're doing better than the state. For the month of October, the state positivity rate was 6.7 and ours was 3.1. That's based on my calculations. Again, I think that's an indication of the fact that we addressed the problem earlier and have been continue to be aggressive and trying to contain the growth, the spread of the virus. So my thanks to all. The last thing I say is I apologize for having to get up and leave. During your comments, Commissioner Hall, I had to get up and answer the door. That happened a second time. One of the disadvantages of being at home is people come to the door and they can be persistent. So my apologies to both you, Commissioner Hall, and you, Director, for my interruptions.
All right, well, thank you, Florence. I think we got, was someone talking? Okay, I think we got through all of our questions around COVID-19, so thanks for the update. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And I look forward to seeing the press release come out with information on the testing event. All right, last report here is Lincoln County Jail 2020 inspection presented by Sheriff Curtis Landers and Lieutenant Jamie Russell.
Chair
Yeah.
Jacobson, before the sheriff starts, we do need to do one quick action. On the, that is to extend the emergency declaration for the COVID-19 emergency.
I totally skipped that. Yeah,
That's
my
okay.
apologies.
And just our current declaration expires tomorrow. The governor just extended the state declaration to January 2nd, which happens to be a Saturday. That doesn't really work well for us in terms of our meetings. So we're recommending that you actually extend it to the following Wednesday, which would be January 6th. And we prepared a resolution which accomplishes the continuation of the declaration. And we just need a motion to adopt that.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to do that, but just mainly for the sake of public members watching and listening, I'm finding, that a lot of people really don't understand the purpose or the scope of a declaration of emergency. And if I could put Mr. Belmont on the spot, just to give a very brief capsule summary of why, for instance, with COVID, that we originally declared a state of emergency and why we are continuing it.
We declare an emergency when an incident or occurrence happens that really taxes the normal resources and the normal policies and procedures we have in place to deal with the emergency. So for instance, the wildfire, we think of this usually in the context of classic events like a wildfire, a flood, an earthquake, those kinds of things that you declare an emergency. It allows us to exercise some additional authority to respond to the emergency and also to recover from the emergency. And it also then qualifies us for assistance. We can call on fellow counties through mutual aid agreements. We can call on the state with their resources and then the federal government. So this is a declared emergency on a state and national level. And we continue to declare the emergency so that we can continue the various actions. We just spent a great deal of time discussing our response to the COVID emergency. So that's really the purpose for doing that.
Thank you, Council Belmont. Commissioner Hall, did you still want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I would move that we adopt the proposed resolution number 20-2-11A, extending the declaration of a state of emergency related to COVID-19.
I'll second it, but if I may, Chair Jacobson, I believe we still have two other emergency declarations in effect. Is that correct, Council Belmont? One for the wildfires and one for public health?
We do.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Thank you, Wayne, and thank you for catching that. All right, sorry, Sheriff Landers and Lieutenant Russell, we are now moving on to the agenda item. Sorry for the delay there.
Oh, no problem at all. Thank you, Commissioner. I'm Curtis Landers, Lincoln County Sheriff, and wanted to bring forward, we sent this full report to each of you in email format, and I believe it was Commissioner Hunt that asked to have it provided during a meeting, a public meeting, so that we could discuss it openly. And we received our biennial jail inspection. I believe it was the on-site inspection was October 15th, and we received the report, I think it was October 21st. And just some background on the jail inspection. The Oregon State Sheriff's Association adopted the Oregon Jail Standards in 2000. And if I remember right, I wasn't sheriff then, but it was a unanimous vote by the sheriffs from around the state. All 36 sheriffs agreed to do that, which is, I imagine, with commissioners around the state to get a unanimous decision on something like this is hard to do. But all the sheriffs agreed that it was very important for each jail to be inspected at least once every 2 years on standards that basically are non-binding guidelines to improve the operation and management of the jail facility and reinforce and enhance staff professionalism. The standards are based on legal requirements, sound corrections, and the application of the line of management levels in our jails, bringing all staff together in the common goal of complying with or exceeding the adopted standards. And there are currently 319 standards that we must meet every 2 years. And I was very impressed with the jail team. We actually met all 319 standards on the very first inspection, and this is the first, I understand, the first time we accomplished that. Usually we missed a couple or didn't have the right proofs up some, and you have 30 days to bring in compliance, which we always have. We've always met all this together and been in compliance, but have never been on the first try. So really, a true testament to the great work our jail team is doing. Just some comments, and I know you've probably read the report, but just some comments that stood out for me. And then I'm going to turn over to Lieutenant Russell to talk a little bit more about the inspection process, because she's actually a lead inspector, and talked about the teams that come around. So obviously, she didn't inspect our team. That was a group of inspectors from other jails from around the state. But the inspectors were very impressed with everything the jail team is doing, our jail team is doing for our adults in custody. Some comments that were made, and I quoted these, were, we all commented on how it was one of the most squared away inspections we've been on yet. And during our time touring Lincoln County Jail, it was extremely evident that the adults in custody are well taken care of. And our inspectors found Lincoln County Jail goes the extra mile when it comes to how they try and help AICs in mental health crisis. And as I read those, again, just very impressed and proud of our jail team. That's something that I truly believe in, all those statements and more. We don't just take these the inspections and the standards as something we're just checking the boxes. We really try to go above and beyond them. They're best practices, and we really strive to not only achieve them, but go beyond. And again, because having our adults in custody is important to us, taking good care of them while they're in custody here, and really trying to help them. So once they leave our facility, the goal is for them not to return. And you've heard me talk about that before, and how much I am trying to achieve that. And it all goes in this process, what we're doing. We also know that jails are high liability, and meeting these standards helps reduce our liability and our risk. And I think meeting it all in the first time means we weren't missing something during the 2-year cycle, that we've had everything in place. And again, I'm just really proud of the team's accomplishment in meeting this. So I'm going to turn over to Lieutenant Russell, and she can talk a little more in depth, and then of course we'll answer any questions that you have.
Good afternoon. Thank you, commissioners, and thank you for Sheriff for the introduction. As the sheriff indicated, we have an inspection team from all over the state of Oregon that toured and inspected your Lincoln County Jail on October 15th. Because of our current situation with COVID, we limit those inspection teams from either 4 to 6 inspectors. In this case, we had 4 inspectors that came to Lincoln County. We were fortunately totally compliant when they arrived, so the process for them was really nice and quick and smooth. And I can speak from experience as a lead inspector, and I've done more inspections throughout the state than I can probably even count. Having everything in line when you arrive at the facility does help make that process go much smoother. Throughout the process, when the team arrives, the first thing they do is take a thorough tour of the facility. And part of that is not only talking with the staff members who are working, but also talking with our adults in custody to find out how they're treated, how's the food, anything that they may like to report to the inspectors that may not be a positive or a positive. So the feedback that was received was positive, which is good. We don't advise our adults in custody that these inspectors are coming, so they're not prepared with the speech to advise. They are just randomly asked some questions. So it's always good to hear that we are getting that positive feedback. As the sheriff indicated, there are 319 Oregon jail standards currently in place. 15 of those standards are what are required by ORS. So ORS 169076 lists out 15 standards that we have to, by law, abide to. So Oregon takes that quite a bit further with their 319 standards. Oregon is one of probably about a handful of states that have these Oregon jail standards, or have jail standards for the state. We, back in 1999, actually, the Oregon State Sheriff's Association purchased the standards from Utah and created what we now have as the Oregon jail standards. Since that time, we've had many states reach out to us wanting to learn and glean from Oregon what we have been able to establish. So it's really been a great process. I can tell you from my travels around the state that it doesn't matter the size of the facility. I come back to our facility with some piece of information. There are standards, but there are lots of different ways to accomplish those standards. So it's great to see Multnomah County, who has over 1,000 adults in custody, or going to Baker County, where they have, a dozen, how they make those standards work for them. And when the standards were written, they were written in such a manner that no matter the size of your facility, you can meet those standards. So it's a great process that Oregon, the Sheriff's Association, has adopted. It continues to grow and expand, and as with other types of policies, it's a living document that changes as our laws dictate to us. And we're just really, really excited to come out of this inspection out of the gate with 100%. And thank you for your support. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Sheriff Landers and Lieutenant Russell. I don't have any questions. I feel like when the report first came out and it was emailed to us, I had a few things that I emailed Sheriff Landers about, so I feel like I had my questions answered. Commissioner Hall, questions or comments?
No questions, just the comment that this is really a report that I know that the sheriff, lieutenant, and the entire jail team can and should be proud of. That I think it reflects, and that this is something that truly wasn't achieved overnight. It reflects an ongoing commitment to excellence in all phases of the operation. And I'll just say bravo, team, thank you, and great work.
Commissioner Hunt, anything you'd like to add?
Well, first of all, I, as I think you know, serve on the City Insurance Services Board, which provides insurance services to most of the cities and counties in the state. And one of the areas that we have seen to be increasing the most rapidly as far as risk and losses with jail issues. And so the fact that our sheriff's office and staff, the corrections staff, were able to get 100% on this test, to me is outstanding. And I think it's really worthy of recognition, which is why I asked that it be presented to our board for two reasons. Number one, again, truly outstanding work that deserves to be recognized, not only the sheriff and Lieutenant Russell, but all of the staff that have worked hard to make our jail as good and as effective as it can be, and as is demonstrated by the 100% in the inspection. But the other factor is that, as I mentioned, jails are a risk, and the fact that our jail is operating as well as it is reduces the risk that our county is subject to, and obviously can be beneficial when it comes to other aspects of the risks that our county and citizens may incur. So, two reasons I wanted to have this presentation made. And the last question I have, I'll direct it to Lieutenant Russell. Did you give the inspectors a muffin?
They did sample a muffin. It was an option for them. Some of them actually took some to go for their drive home. So I think they liked it.
All right. Well, thank you for indulging my humor. Thank you. Again, outstanding job.
Thank you very much, commissioners.
My phone keeps shutting off, which is where I'm having my audio from today. So sorry about the delay there. Thank you for the presentation and the nice work done. Okay, next up, I think we're under Commissioner reports. Commissioner Hall, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Hunt, anything?
No, I have nothing. Thank you.
Okay, I do have a small report I would like to give just on the winter warming shelter situation. As all of you can tell, it is officially fall and it's starting to get cold. There's been a lot of questions around the warming facilities for the winter, especially with COVID. It makes doing congregate housing, challenging. So, just to be clear, the county typically does not provide direct service in terms of congregate sheltering. We have provided some money, we have provided fairgrounds in the past, but this year with COVID, I feel like it's a number of things coming to the table to kind of make this work with winter sheltering, including some direct involvement by the county. So just a little walk down memory lane. Starting in March, when COVID first hit, the county began doing a kind of hotel voucher program to get basically homeless people and people that were high risk for the virus off the street and into shelter to basically prevent spread. Eventually, FEMA had a non-congregate housing allowance that you could apply for, which we did. There are some specific things you have to follow for that. It's not open-ended, but people that are at all related to an outbreak or COVID or need to quarantine or presumed positive, or maybe you're living with several people in your house and someone in your house is positive and you are not, so you would like to leave and not become positive. Any of those situations fit the FEMA non-congregate housing, but in addition, if you have vulnerable populations with pre-existing conditions that make them extra vulnerable, you can also use that in this case as well. So when that was available, we started basically using that FEMA non-congregate housing as the method to hotel people. So moving forward into this winter, for the Newport situation, and I'll talk about Lincoln City in a moment, it's basically Chance. As a nonprofit, they have some grant money from a few different sources, and actually just put an announcement out earlier today that they have got even more money. They will be doing a hotel kind of vouchering program. We will continue doing what we are doing. So we have that block of room. Then in addition, Graceland Haven has also applied for some grants from some foundations, and they will be doing hoteling as well. The three parties are going to start meeting on a weekly basis. We've been meeting multiple times to kind of put this together, but those three entities will be meeting on a regular basis just to make sure people don't slip through the cracks. They will kind of keep meeting to make sure they're meeting the needs of the community. Our dollars through FEMA non-congregate housing ends 12/31/2020. So after that, we may not be in the game anymore, but we are, myself and Council Bellman are working on securing some possible foundation funding and some other resources to extend that past 12/31, not just for winter sheltering, but it's very likely we're still going to need to put people in quarantine after 12/31, so making sure that we have resources to continue to do that, which is the spread low in our community. I think here very soon there'll be some outreach materials kind of sent out on behalf of all three of those groups, kind of talking about the winter program and how referrals are made and who you call. But the bottom line is, I think if you called any one of those agencies, we are going to work together to hopefully make that a seamless referral process. Moving up north into the Lincoln City area, again, Chance still has dollars for hotel sheltering, and that's countywide. So they're still a partner up north. We are working, in fact, it might be done. We might know the answer to this, but we've been working the last couple of weeks to secure a block of rooms in Lincoln City through the wintertime. I'm not sure if it's completely finalized yet, but I know that we are close to having that done. And then in addition, there is a beginning conversation happening with a church up there that a nonprofit is having about possible congregate sheltering starting in January, especially if there's not resources for hoteling after that 12/31 date. So that's kind of an update on the kind of winter warming shelter. I think there'll be more information to come here in the next week or so, but things really are gearing up for that. All right, no reports from others. So moving down to decision and action items, changes to the 2020-2021 Lincoln County fee schedule presented by Kristen Ely.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We saw the new changes a few weeks ago. Those were presented to you. The only departments, again, are the DA's office and briefly the Personnel Department and then the Planning Department. So outstanding was more of a definition of what constitutes a major conditional use. So I provided, if Christy can share her screen, and Mr. Hughes on if he also wants to comment, that we have a footnote we'd like to include with that.
Oh, the screen not showing.
Any questions regarding that footnote?
I think I was one of the ones that suggested we have some type of language around that, and this satisfies me. Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Hall, comments on the footnote?
None. I think it does clarify what we were looking for.
Okay, Commissioner Hunt, comments?
Yeah, certainly an improvement. Good work.
Okay.
Mr. Hughes, do you have anything to add?
No, except as I said, the first time this came up, I would, to the extent that the decision rests with the department to declare that something deserves this treatment, it would have to be really obvious that it's a major project. And I'm likely to confer with at least one of the commissioners prior to asking that we impose the larger fee, but it will not be for in-betweeners. It's going to have to be a very, very big project that obviously is going to require a tremendous amount of work on our parts. Thank you.
So we also have not received any feedback regarding the proposed fee changes. You know, these have been out for a couple weeks. And so we would be asking the board to make a decision whether you would approve these and finalize them.
You know, I think, Kristen, the other thing that you had pointed out to me is that once this was proposed, you began to look at other jurisdictions, and you found that this is actually a common practice to do this.
It is.
And I wasn't quite aware that was the case. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about maybe some modifications to the code, the development code, to maybe define it further. But like Mr. Husing says, I think if you had a project description that would take a lot of staff time and I guess garner something that would be an increase of 20% of any kind of variance, then that's what you would be looking at as a major conditional use.
Okay. So, Kristen, in terms of process, I think, are we ready to adopt today? I think you already said we need to wait. Sorry, I kind of misheard that. You cut out a little bit.
So it would be, so today was set for a decision action on this item. We haven't received any feedback on the fees. So that's been out there for a couple weeks. We've received no comment or input from any of the public or anyone else.
Okay, is there any further discussion on this? Commissioner Hall, anything?
Nope.
Okay, Commissioner Hunt?
Nope.
I feel like we did bulk majority of our discussion, what was needed previously when this was brought to us, so I feel comfortable potentially adopting today if there's a motion and a second to do so.
All right, Madam Chair, I move approval of the order changing the 2020 to 2021 Lincoln County fee schedule.
I will go ahead and second that. There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. All right, before we adjourn, just a little public service announcement that you still have time to vote. So if your ballots are sitting in the junk drawer or on the kitchen table or wherever it is you put your mail, go dig them out and vote. We have drop boxes throughout the county, so go get them in and make sure your vote is counted. Other than that, Yeah, do not mail them. Go ahead and drop them off in one of the county's drop boxes. Good point, Commissioner Hunt. Yeah. Other than that, I'll go ahead and adjourn. Our next Board of Commissioners meeting is Monday, November 9th, 2020 at 3 p.m.
And Madam Chair, but could I just mention very briefly, I think I've informed staff, I do need to request an excused absence for that meeting, but I know that my understanding is both you and Commissioner Hunt are available, so you will have a quorum for business.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hall. All right, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
This conference is no longer being recorded.